Hello, I'm Todd, and this video is about Alloy, a video game some fellow students and I made at the University of New Mexico. So to start it off, I'll quickly explain the game, and then I'll go into detail on the roles I played. Alloy is a third-person action multiplayer game with some RTS qualities developed in the Unreal Engine. Alloy takes place on little scrapyard worlds, asteroids of junk. You and your opponent both play as a builder bot. As a builder bot, you have no means of attack. You are also very susceptible to attack. What you do have is a magnet. You can use that to collect pieces of other minion bots. Once you have the parts to make another bot, you can spark it to life. Depending on the pieces you collect, your bots will perform different tasks. Some will become attack bots and go on the offensive, some will stay near to defend, some will repair you, etc. The head dictates what the bot will do, and the body parts dictate how effectively they will do it. Some legs are faster than others, some arms do more damage, and so forth. There are also some special hypercores, or torsos, hidden on each map that'll make super bots. Basically, any bot with a hypercore will perform several times better than the same bot build without it, and that's all you need to know in order to play. Early game, you tend to just collect as much junk as you can and build a base army. Mid game, you may seek specific parts and try to match them with a hypercore, or focus on one type of bot. Late game, it becomes kind of a seesaw battle of resource allocation because as your armies engage with an opponents, they dismantle each other. As the builder bot, you want to be right in the battle, which is risky but key. You're there because as soon as the bot is dismantled, you want to capture those parts and rebuild it again for your side. Ultimately, you want to absorb their whole army. This gets especially intense when it's a 4-player match. I like to zoom out late game for a better view. If your builder bot dies, it'll respawn at one of the start points. This is not so bad early game, but is quite the penalty late game. And that's Alloy in a nutshell. It's a pretty decent game considering it was conceived and built in just one school year. So roughly 9 months by a core team of about 11 or 12 very busy people. So that said, let's talk about some of my roles. For starts, game design. I came onto this project fairly early in the development cycle. Lots of the ideas and themes were already decided on, but had yet to be visualized. Also, the actual gameplay was still up in the air. Most of this stuff was conceived by the director, Eric Goyce. I spent lots of time with him and the team at the whiteboard. We had some cool gameplay ideas, but I would often find that in the end, they were nothing more than who can randomly win first. I was pushing for a game that was more skill-based and less luck-based. Eventually, we came up with Alloy as it is, and I feel it's a nice balance between the two. So along with gameplay design, I also did some concept art. Eric wanted Short Circuit meets Wall-E for the builder bot. I threw together some designs. I mostly focused on the back of the bot, as that would be the primary view. Ultimately, the builder bot ended up being more Wall-E and less Short Circuit. In fact, the decision to make the whole game lighthearted and child-friendly surfaced around this time. So along with the builder bot, I also designed several parts for minion bots. I designed heads, legs, shields, etc. Here's a hover pad I designed. You can see it went from drawing to low poly model to textured model to animated model. Here are some spider legs that Eric asked for. It was important to me that these looked functional and that the modeler could execute the idea, so I made these drawings extra clear. And here they are, modeled and textured. So now I'd like to speak on one of my more long-term roles, level designer. Here's my level. It's called Hope Floats, and it was built with the UDK level editor. I also used Maya to build and import some custom assets. This map was designed for 4 players, so it's large. There are 4 spawn points, one in each corner of the map. I tried to make every section unique yet equal. Each point has a very different layout, but has a hypercore nearby and roughly the same resources. Now right off the bat, you may notice this map is very different than the one I was using to show the gameplay earlier. I wanted to have a very stark contrast to that. My idea was to give the game variety. The first map is cramped, dark, and dense. That's great. But once that gets old, you can play on this map, which is open, bright, and vast. One thing I like is you can look across it and see what your opponent is up to. Because this is a floating map, I had a visual challenge. When building it, I had to consider you could see the edges of it from any point along its border, almost like being on the outside of the map looking at it. That meant I couldn't allow any ground geometry to just end on an edge. The player would be able to see the ground as actually paper thin, or possibly encounter an awkward alignment of assets or geometry. So getting a good view from every spot along the border of this entire map proved to be quite a challenge. Another thing I wanted to do was break up the terrain with some sort of large solid visual device. That is why I built these sets of rocks in Maya. I could place them in any number of combinations. I could break them up, stack them, make them different sizes, and then flip them over and do all of that again. Basically, I could reuse the asset many times without it being super obvious to the player. With the rocks, I also built several pieces of junk. Things like tire rims, gears, and scraps of metal. That was part of the brilliance in the game's theme. It's easy to quickly model and texture decent junk. So now I'll show you where I stashed some hypercores. The only way to reach this one's by executing this sweet jump. Over here, there's one hiding out in plain view, but you kind of have to solve this little edge maze to get to it. In this corner is my favorite. I have this one hidden down underneath these rocks. I really like when games have these Easter egg feeling areas, places that you feel like other players may not know about. And that basically covers Hope Floats and how I made it. I like the color palette and I like the openness. Again, a contrast to our other map. I think level design is one of the aspects of game production that I enjoy the most. And now I'll just show a couple of other small things I helped with. Deep into crunch time, I was assigned the task of coming up with our menu UI. Here's one of my earlier concepts. As you can see, it was transparent. Eric wanted it to feel heavier, so I added some metal treatments. Here's the final functioning design. We have a rusty wall with a hole punched through it. Also, as a last-minute low-priority item, I came up with this quick chart that explains some of the gameplay, and this shows how the various parts combine to form different types of minion bots. Lastly, I had a small hand in the sound design. Eric, the sound team, and I spent a day in a junkyard recording. We broke things, bashed metal, and slammed doors. Mad fun. And that pretty much sums up Alloy and the roles I played in getting it made. It was a great project. The people I met on Alloy have become some of my best friends. Thank you for watching, especially if you are a prospective employer.